All right, so this time we're diving into a career that's a bit more, niche. We're going to be talking about import-export specialists, but not just any kind. We're diving specifically into the world of tobacco products.
Okay.
And lucky for us, we've got some great info to unpack from, RoleCatcher. They've really gone in depth on this one.
Yeah, what I found really interesting was how RoleCatcher highlights the global nature of this job. It really is about understanding international regulations and how those impact the movement of, well, tobacco products.
So it's not just like packing up a box of cigarettes and slapping on a shipping label.
Right, right. It's way more than that. Think of it more like uh, you're a crucial link between the people making the products, often overseas, and the consumers buying them, who could be anywhere in the world.
Okay, so there's a lot more to it than meets the eye, and RoleCatcher really emphasizes that specialist part. They go into a lot of detail about the knowledge required for this kind of role.
Yeah, they break it down like really well. Everything from the day-to-day tasks and the work environment to the kind of money you could make, and even like interview tips, which is super helpful.
Seriously, I was impressed by how thorough they were. They actually use the phrase vital link to describe these specialists, so I'm curious, what does that actually look like in practice? What are these specialists, actually doing?
Okay, so imagine this.
Mm.
You're the one making sure that a shipment of, say, hand-rolled cigars from a small farm, maybe somewhere like Nicaragua, is going to get through customs without a hitch and arrive safely at, like, a fancy cigar lounge in Dubai.
Wow.
You're that essential link in the chain, making sure everything's good to go, the quality's top-notch, and all the paperwork is in order.
That sounds of a lot of pressure, especially with RoleCatcher mentioning how this industry is constantly changing with new rules and new technologies popping up all the time.
Oh, absolutely. They talk about things like blockchain technology being used more and more to keep track of tobacco products as they move around the globe.
Blockchain, wow,
Yeah.
okay.
It's wild. It's like every shipment has this digital fingerprint, making it way harder for like counterfeit products to slip through the cracks.
That makes a lot of sense, especially in an industry where, counterfeiting is a big concern.
Exactly. And it's not all about tech either. RoleCatcher stresses the importance of things like going to industry events, joining trade groups, really immersing yourself in that world to stay ahead of the curve.
It's like constant learning is key in this line of work.
For sure, for sure. They seem to emphasize that constantly adapting to new information and new situations is like essential if you want to make it in this field.
And I'm guessing that all that knowledge translates to some pretty good job security. Role catchers seem to suggest that the demand for people with these skills is only going up, which could mean better job stability and earning potential down the line.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet. It's that whole thing, right? The more specialized your skill set, the harder you are to replace, especially in a field that's constantly changing. And that usually means higher earning potential.
Makes sense. So let's say someone is interested in this career path. Where do they even start? It doesn't sound like the kind of thing you just fall into.
Definitely not. RoleCatcher lays out a pretty clear path, though. They recommend starting with entry-level positions, things like an import-export assistant. Get that hands-on experience, learn the ropes.
Kind of like an apprenticeship almost.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can gradually move up to roles with more responsibility, like coordinator, then specialist, and eventually maybe even managing all the import-export stuff for a whole company or even a region.
So there's like a real ladder you can climb in this field. What I thought was really cool about RoleCatcher was how they didn't just stop at describing the career path. They actually provide tools to help you get hired, which seems super valuable.
Yeah, it's like having a career coach in your pocket. They've got everything from resume and cover letter builders to get this AI-powered interview prep.
Yeah, I saw that. They've got a whole section on interview questions specific to this industry, which is awesome.
Right, it's super helpful.
It's like having a secret weapon for your job search. So we've talked about the role itself, how to progress in your career, and even some of the resources available. But what's the day-to-day actually like for someone in this job? Like, what's a typical day, if there even is such a thing?
Typical might be a bit of a stretch. RoleCatcher paints this picture of a dynamic, maybe even a little high-pressure environment.
Okay.
You're dealing with deadlines, international regulations, and, well, sometimes unexpected problems just pop up. Imagine a shipment of specialty tobacco gets held up in customs because of a paperwork issue.
Uh-oh.
Exactly. You got to be able to think fast and find a solution.
So not the best fit for someone who likes a predictable routine.
Probably not. You got to be adaptable, resourceful, a good problem solver. But on the flip side, RoleCatcher also mentioned potential travel opportunities, which is cool. Imagine like overseeing a shipment firsthand, maybe even visiting a tobacco farm in another country to check out the quality.
Okay, so there is some potential for adventure in this career path.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's not all just paperwork and regulations. It's about understanding the whole journey of these products from where they're grown to, the people who enjoy them.
That's really interesting.
It can definitely be a pretty cool job.
So it sounds like this is a job for someone who likes a good balance of, staying organized, but also being able to adapt when things don't go as planned. You mentioned Rollcatcher talked about travel opportunities.
Right, right. Like actually going to visit a tobacco farm in another country to, see the quality of the product firsthand.
Okay, so let's say I'm on that trip. What am I looking for? How do you even begin to assess the quality of, like, tobacco leaves?
Well, every product's can have its own quirks. But generally, you're checking out the growing conditions, how they're harvesting everything, and of course, the overall quality of the leaves themselves. You
Hmm.
might even get involved in the pricing negotiations with the farmers.
So it's really hands-on. You're not just like stuck in an office pushing papers. You're out there actually getting to know the product and the people who produce it.
Exactly. Building those relationships with suppliers is huge in this job. And it's not just the farmers either. You could be working with shipping companies, customs brokers, even government agencies and retailers. It's a lot of different people to keep happy.
It sounds like a lot of relationship building. Speaking of which, Rollcatcher mentioned how crucial it is to stay ahead of industry trends. What are some of the big things happening in the tobacco world that someone in this role needs to be aware of?
Well, one of the big ones right now is the whole sustainability movement. There's a growing demand for ethically sourced tobacco products, which is definitely shaking things up.
So consumers are really starting to care about where their tobacco comes from and how it's produced, huh?
Big time. And that's impacting the entire supply chain. More and more companies want their tobacco to come from farms that meet higher standards, both environmentally and in terms of labor practices.
So as an import-export specialist, you might actually be involved in making sure those supply chains are sustainable.
Absolutely. You might be the one auditing farms, looking over certifications, even working directly with suppliers to improve their practices.
That adds a whole other layer of complexity, but it also sounds kind of rewarding, being a part of that positive change.
It definitely can be. It's just one example of how the tobacco industry is evolving to keep up with what consumers want.
Rollcatcher also mentioned how technology is playing a bigger and bigger role. We talked about blockchain earlier, but what are some other ways tech is impacting things for import-export specialists?
Data analytics is huge right now, and it's only getting bigger. By analyzing all the data companies are collecting, they can get some seriously valuable insights into things like market trends, what consumers are responding to, even how efficient their supply chain actually is.
So instead of relying on like gut feelings or guesswork, you're making decisions based on real data.
Exactly. And that means import-export specialists who can not only handle the traditional parts of the job, but can also work with data and utilize technology are in super high demand.
It's like a double whammy of skills. So, looking ahead, what's the job outlook like for this field? Is this a career with staying power?
Well, it's hard to predict the future, but the global tobacco trade is likely to be a significant market for quite a while. As long as there's demand, there's going to be a need for people who can handle the ins and outs of getting those products to consumers.
So it's not like it's going to disappear overnight.
Not at all. In fact, with all the changes happening in the industry, with regulations, consumer preferences, and technology all evolving, the need for skilled import-export specialists might even increase.
That's good to hear. But it's not all smooth sailing in the world of international trade, right? Rollcatcher didn't shy away from the challenges either.
Definitely not. They talk about things like unexpected delays, navigating tricky customs regulations, and staying on top of trade agreements that seem to change every other day.
It sounds like it could be pretty stressful at times.
It definitely can be.
So who thrives in that kind of environment? Who's cut out for this kind of work?
Well, you got to be organized, detail-oriented, a master of logistics, that's for sure. But you also need to be a problem solver, a good communicator, and honestly, a bit of a diplomat. You're the go-between for everyone involved, suppliers, customs officials, shipping companies, sometimes even government agencies. It's a lot to juggle.
It's like you're the conductor of an orchestra making sure everyone's in sync.
That's a great way to put it.
Because things don't always go according to plan.
Never. A shipment might get delayed because of bad weather, or customs finds an issue with the paperwork, Or maybe a supplier has a production hiccup.
So you got to be able to think on your feet and come up with solutions fast.
Exactly. And you got to be able to communicate clearly with everyone involved, keep them in the loop, manage expectations, and resolve conflicts, all while staying professional and diplomatic.
RoleCatcher really emphasized those communication and people skills like they're absolutely crucial for this job. They even made it sound like being a cultural ambassador is part of the job description.
For sure. Imagine you're negotiating a deal with a supplier in, say, Japan. You need to know their business etiquette, how they communicate, even just how to build rapport so you can actually get things done.
It's like diplomacy through trade.
Exactly. You're not just representing your company, you're representing your whole culture.
That's a lot of responsibility, but it sounds like it could be incredibly rewarding too.
It really can be. That's part of what makes this career path so interesting and multifaceted.
So it's demanding, definitely, but it also has a lot to offer in return.
Absolutely.
It almost sounds like you need a bit of an adventurous spirit for this kind of work.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of adventure, one thing that really stood out to me in RoleCatcher was how important it is to stay ahead of the curve in this industry. Like they talked about how the tobacco world is always changing with new regulations popping up, new technologies emerging, consumer preferences shifting. It's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah, how do you even do that? How do you stay on top of all those moving parts?
Well, RoleCatcher was really big on the idea of continuous learning, never stopping, really. They suggested going to industry conferences, joining those professional organizations, even taking online courses or getting certifications to stay current on everything.
So it's not like you learn it once and you're good to go. It's a constant process of like updating your knowledge base.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think for a lot of people, that's what makes it exciting. There's always something new to learn, a new challenge to figure out. You're always growing.
It's definitely not a stagnant career, that's for sure. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the skills you need, the knowledge base, the challenges, the rewards, all that good stuff. But to wrap things up, let's bring it back to RoleCatcher for a second. What are some of the big takeaways from their platform that someone interested in this career should really keep in mind?
I think the biggest one is that RoleCatcher really does give you a roadmap. Like they've done the legwork, they've gathered the information, and they've identified all the essential ingredients you need to succeed in this specific niche of import-export.
It's like having a blueprint for your career, which is amazing.
Totally. And it's not just about giving you the information. They give you actual tools to help you along the way. They've got resume and cover letter templates, practice interview questions, even tips on how to negotiate your salary.
Wow, okay, so they really do hold your hand through the process.
Yeah, they really do, which can be so helpful, especially if you're just starting out or thinking about making a career change.
100%. Well, before we wrap up this deep dive completely, I've got one last question for you. If you could give just one piece of advice to someone considering this career path, what would it be?
Honestly, don't be afraid to just go for it. The world of international trade can be a wild ride. It's complicated, it's challenging, but man, it's rewarding.
Yeah.
If you're passionate about global business, if you get a thrill out of a fast-paced environment, and if you love learning and growing, this could be the perfect fit for you.
I love that. Embrace the challenge, embrace the unknown, embrace the opportunity to make a real impact on a global scale.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And hey, RoleCatcher's got your back every step of the way.
That's right. And on that note, I think we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the world of import-export specialists in the tobacco industry. It's been a really interesting journey, exploring this unique career path and learning about everything it takes to make it in this global field.
It really has. I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about as they consider their own career journeys.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, the more you know about your options, the better prepared you are to make choices that light you up and get you excited about your future.
Well said. So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the things that spark your curiosity.
And we'll be right here with you, exploring right along with you.